G'day. Frank Daniel wrote this poem about Bernie, a young bloke who sowed his wild oats in a small country town. Poor old Mrs. Riley went to visit Widow Wiley to complain about that lanky son of hers, for he'd been coming round a lot, jumping into Janie's cot and staying there for hours upon hours. Unbeknownst to her, of course, she could think of nothing worse, for the lanky lout had been a trifle clumsy, and her darling daughter Jane, so simple and so plain, has now declared she's gonna be a mum, see? Well, says Ma, before such stories grow, we'll have to see old Father Crow and have them joined in holy matrimony. Or think of all the scandal if this story starts to ramble. Lord save us from the tongue of Ma Maloney. If she gets a whisper of it, there'll be no end to gossip, for my Janie girl was oh so sweet and pure. But if we have them wed tonight, everything will be all right and the sin will be forgotten, I am sure. Well, the wily Widow Wiley, with deception practised guiley, said this news came to her as quite a shock, because she'd heard from Mrs. McErnie that a lanky-legged Bernie had also been adding to her flock. Mrs. Macca's daughter May was now in the family way. Her baby would be born the end of June, while from up along the street came the word so indiscreet that Bern had had his way with Mary Boone. Idle talk, somewhat malign, says that Mary's been confined to a convent in a city far away. But Mrs. Riley wasn't listening. She was fired up and bristling, determined she would settle it her way. All those other girls don't matter, she began to nag and natter. I'll not listen to the least of your objections. I'll not have my little girl be the talk of all the world, having one of them immaculate conceptions. Her complaining went too long. Widow Wiley listened on till she heard the Harley fire up out back. The motor started rumbling, drowning out Ma Riley's grumbling as the sickle motored down along the track. It was Bernie who bestrode it, as up the lane he rode it with a pillion passenger behind. Dressed in suits of leather black, helmets, boots and all that tack, he gave Ma Riley that old one-finger sign. Yeah, he was heading out of town. Then he stopped and turned around and gave his mum a final wave goodbye. Ma Riley stared and squinted. The long red ponytail had hinted that the passenger was little Joy Mackay. Yeah, she was bloomin' fuming and correct in her assuming that Bernie had the redhead pregnant too. Yeah, Bern had made his choice. He was clearing off with Joyce, was going to make for them a life anew. Ma Riley threw a stick and then she heaved a brick, but her aim was out and thus to no avail. Then a tear ran down her cheek as she cried, "You're bloody weak!" As off into the sunset Bernie sailed. Now in every second dwelling, some poor miss is slowly swelling. The town was like a little patent place, and the gossips were all tossed as each gossip tale was quashed, as each gossip gossiped to each gossip's face. A few years slowly passed and Bernie's memory held fast in the lanky-legged kids at kindergarten. But the problem for each mother was that each long-legged brother looked alike and took a lot of parting. Now each day at school, as they learn the golden rule, these kids seem drawn by a mystic sense. Every time they hear the rumble of a Harley's throaty grumble, you'll see them lining up along the fence. That's Frank Daniel. Thank you.